The Battle of Trenton, 1776, turning the tide of the American Revolution. In the winter of 1776, the American Revolution stood on the brink of disaster. The Continental Army, led by General George Washington, had endured a series of crushing defeats at the hands of the British Army and their Hessian allies. The dream of independence, proclaimed so boldly in July of that year, was fading rapidly. Morale among the soldiers was at its lowest. Enlistments were set to expire, and many feared the revolution would die before it truly began. But in the darkness of that December, Washington would launch one of the boldest military gambles in American history, a surprise attack across an icy river in the dead of night against a professional garrison of enemy troops. This was the Battle of Trenton, fought on December 26, 1776, a pivotal moment that would breathe new life into the American cause. Background: a nation in peril. By the end of 1776, the Continental Army had been driven out of New York, following defeats at the Battle of Long Island, the Battle of White Plains, and the loss of Fort Washington. Pursued by British General William Howe and his forces, Washington retreated across New Jersey in a desperate bid to preserve what was left of his army. The British established winter quarters in New Jersey, stationing garrisons in several key towns. In the city of Trenton, about 1,500 Hessian soldiers, German mercenaries hired by the British, were commanded by Colonel Johann Rall. Washington's army, meanwhile, had crossed the Delaware River into Pennsylvania, stripping the area of boats to slow British pursuit. His force had dwindled to around 2,400 men, poorly clothed, exhausted, and facing the bitter cold. Many soldiers lacked shoes, their feet wrapped in rags. Supplies were scarce, and spirits were broken. It was in this dire situation that Washington conceived a daring plan. The plan: a Christmas surprise. Washington knew that the Hessians in Trenton were likely to be less alert during the Christmas holiday. Intelligence suggested they were unprepared for a major attack. If Washington could strike swiftly, he could achieve a morale-boosting victory and possibly encourage reenlistments. The plan called for a night crossing of the Delaware River on Christmas night, followed by a 9-mile march to Trenton and a dawn assault. The operation required perfect timing, secrecy, and iron determination. 3 separate forces were to cross the river. Washington's main force of 2,400 men at McCunk's Ferry. A second force under General James Ewing to cross downstream and block retreat. And a third under Colonel John Cadwalader to attack from the south. However, as events unfolded, only Washington's force would succeed in crossing due to the treacherous weather.
The crossing into the storm. On the night of December 25, 1776, the Continental Army began the crossing. The weather quickly turned against them. A nor'easter brought snow, sleet, and freezing rain. Ice floes clogged the river, and the wind howled. Using Durham boats, large, flat-bottomed vessels, Washington's men ferried horses, cannons, and troops across the icy waters. It was a slow, grueling process, taking hours longer than expected. Instead of arriving before dawn, the army would not reach the New Jersey shore until nearly 4 a.m. Despite the delays, Washington pressed on. His determination became legendary. Soldiers recalled him riding along the riverbank, urging his men forward, his resolve unshaken by the storm. The march to Trenton. The march from the river to Trenton was brutal. The soldiers trudged through snow and slush, their feet leaving bloody prints on the frozen ground. Many carried muskets with wet powder, making them unreliable. 2 columns advanced, one under General John Sullivan along the River Road, another under General Nathaniel Greene along the Upper Road. Washington rode between the columns, coordinating the advance. As dawn approached, the men could hear the Delaware River's icy waters behind them and the distant sound of Hessian drums in Trenton ahead. The battle began. At around 8 a.m. on December 26th, the Americans struck. The Hessians were caught completely off guard. Contrary to later myths, they were not drunk from Christmas celebrations, but they were unprepared for a coordinated attack. Washington's artillery, commanded by Captain Alexander Hamilton and Captain Thomas Forrest, opened fire from the outskirts, sweeping the streets with deadly grape shot. Greene's column advanced from the north, cutting off escape to Princeton. Sullivan's column came from the west, sealing the road to Bordentown. The Hessians quickly attempted to form ranks, but the Americans pressed in from multiple directions. Colonel Rahl tried to rally his men, leading a counterattack, but was mortally wounded in the fighting. Without their commander, the Hessians fell into confusion. Within 90 minutes, the battle was over. Of the roughly 1,500 Hessians, about 22 were killed, 83 wounded, and nearly 900 captured. The Americans suffered minimal casualties, 2 men killed in action, and several who died later from exposure. Aftermath: a morale revolution. The victory at Trenton electrified the American cause. For the first time in months, the Continental Army had won a decisive victory. The news spread rapidly, boosting morale and encouraging many soldiers to re-enlist. Washington did not linger long in Trenton. Knowing the British would retaliate, he withdrew across the Delaware with his prisoners and captured supplies. But only days later, he would recross the river and win another victory at the Battle of Princeton on January 3, 1777. These 2 victories in the 10 crucial days of late 1776 and early 1777 transformed the Revolution. They proved that the Continental Army could stand against professional European troops and win. Legacy of the Battle of Trenton. The Battle of Trenton remains one of the most celebrated moments in American military history. It showcased Washington's leadership, courage, and ability to inspire his men against all odds. The image of Washington crossing the Delaware, immortalized in Emanuel Lutzy's famous 1851 painting, has become an enduring symbol of determination and resilience. While the actual crossing was less glamorous, the essence of that night, risking everything for the cause of liberty, continues to inspire. Historians agree that without Trenton, the Revolution might have collapsed. With it, the American fight for independence found new life.